The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is probably one of the most hotly debated topics of the modern day. Guns can be used to commit terrible atrocities, but they can also be used to keep governments in line and to stop them from going full authoritarian, since armed people are a lot harder for governments to mess with. In Britain, however, we pretty much have no gun ownership, unless you meet some extremely specific and very high bar requirements that only a tiny handful of people can meet. So our gun ownership is pretty much zero. But one man disagreed so heavily with the British government's crackdown on firearms that he decided that he was going to tell the entire country how you can make your own firearms at home with everyday materials. And the government did not like that. Philip Luty. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get into the mad lad, it is in fact your boy, Raid Shadow Legends. With stunning graphics and even more engrossing gameplay, Raid continues to bring that console quality experience to your phone, and you can take out your opponents however you want with a roster of any one of the millions of combinations of over 600 champions. So there is almost no limit to the ways that you can farm salt in my favourite game mode, the PvP arena. However, you're going to need to be smarter than ever as you build your team thanks to what Raid is throwing at you next. If you thought that the Doom Tower was hard, then just wait until you take on the Hydra. That's right, you are getting 6 bosses for the price of 1, and each head has its own attributes that you'll need to overcome. There is the head of Blight, which poisons you while protecting itself with a poison cloud, and to get through you're going to have to kill it with fire. The head of Torment scares your team stiff, so you need to protect them with veil buffs. The head of Mischief steals your team's buffs according to their ability and gives to the other heads according to their needs. The head of Wrath weakens your team and then triples its attack power after being hit 15 times. It's literally too angry to die. And also the head of Decay heals the other heads while causing your healing abilities to actually damage your own team. And finally, the head of Suffering is a good old-fashioned tank, and just to be an even bigger pain, it damages your champions whenever it's attacked. And if the Hydra isn't enough, Raid is also giving away a free super limited edition champion to players both new and old. Simple, the esports legend of Navi fame. And to get him, all you have to do is log in for 7 days between now and the 28th of January. But be quick, because if you miss that date, he's gone forever. And on top of that, 'tis the season, so Raid's got a schedule of festive activities lined up, with tournaments, fusion events that will get you some festive champions, and other special events. There is so much around the corner, and there has never been a better time to get started. So if you want a piece of Raid's festive action, you can click my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get 200,000 silver, an energy refill, an XP booster, an ancient shard, and the epic champion Aina. And these rewards are only available to new players and only for the next 30 days, and you can find these rewards here in your inbox. Philip A. Luty was born in 1965 and grew up on a West Yorkshire farm. He had a relatively normal childhood, but as he grew up, he became an avid firearms enthusiast, a strong believer in the right to bear arms, and was very interested in libertarian principles. He was pretty much unknown, and nothing too major happened in his life to put his name in the map, until an event occurred that changed the course of British history. At 9:30 AM on the 13th of March 1996, a man by the name of Thomas Hamilton walked into Dunblane Primary School in Scotland. He was armed with 2 pistols and 2 revolvers, which he had obtained legally. And He then proceeded to kill 17 people and injure 15 others. And this may not come as much of a shock, as this is a regular occurrence nowadays, but back in 1996, in the UK, this was completely unheard of. This country had never experienced anything like this before. Something else that made this event even more horrible is that the victims were mostly young children. This event is infamously known today as the Dunblane Massacre, and because of this atrocity, the UK government did its usual of not letting a good tragedy go to waste and indiscriminately cracked down on almost all private ownership of handguns by confiscating them from British citizens. This really pissed off Philip because he saw this as the punishment and theft of both himself and thousands of other innocent, law-abiding handgun owners by an authoritarian police state. They were all being punished for something that someone else did. He also despised the media for their fear-mongering, as some gun owners later handed over their weapons to the police willingly, with Luty describing them as having a gun owner guilt complex. After the nationwide ban and confiscation, Philip contributed some articles that he had written to the Libertarian Enterprise, which was run by a man called Lester Neil Smith III, an American political activist and author. His website consisted of articles, essays, and letters that are almost exclusively prose and non-fiction, though some poetry and fiction have appeared on there at times. Its main focus, however, was pro-gun rights, and it was extremely anti-police and anti-government. Philip channeled his anger towards the British government, and he was furious that the government had taken away the rights of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves not just from criminals, but most importantly, from the government. So Philip decided to circumvent this ban. He was going to teach people how to make their own guns. It took Philip about 6 months of research and a lot of trial and error, but eventually he created the blueprints for simple firearms that you could create with tools and materials that you could just get from your local hardware store. They were fully functional yet very simple to create, and one of the models even had a suppressor. During this time, he would keep notes as he was building and researching these firearms, documenting the entire process. And when he put these notes together, they became 3 book volumes called Expedient Homemade Firearms. The most well-known of these was an easy-to-understand guide showing how to build the Luty 9mm submachine gun Parabellum. It covered the assembly, manufacture, diagrams, and it even included a troubleshooting guide. Philip obviously wanted to share this knowledge with the entire country so that even your own grandmother could build a firearm. So, on the 1st of May 1998, his book was published by Paladin Press, which was a publishing company based in Colorado. And this book became immensely popular with homemade gun hobbyists from all over the world. And I think he would have tried UK publishers, but obviously none of them would have wanted to have touched that. The gun in this book, however, was far from perfect. It lacked a rifled barrel, which heavily reduced the accuracy and limited the range. But the book itself wasn't simply to show people how to make the gun. The book was made as a statement. It was written to symbolise that the freedom of information makes government-imposed bans futile. As long as information is free and the resources are available, people will make their own firearms. A quote from the book reads, "I dedicate this book to all who refuse to be helpless subjects of the state. Expedient Firearms was written despite the best efforts of informants and the armed agents of a police state to prevent it. Let us never succumb to the evil doctrine of the anti-gun movement and others who would deprive us of our arms and ban books such as this." Philip then decided to go a step further and put a digital copy of his book on his website that you could download for free, which made it much more accessible and increased its reach to other pro-gun hobbyists. However, Fed's gonna Fed, and in the UK, the feds were monitoring the IP addresses of people that were downloading the book from Philip's website, and then opening investigations into these people, which resulted in arrests. This only happened in the UK though, and not to people who downloaded the book in America, because they actually have rights there. One of the people that was investigated for downloading the book had his home raided and was arrested just the day before he was due to go in for open heart surgery. And the only thing that the man had in his possession was a BB gun, a starter pistol, and an antique rifle, all of which were completely legal for him to own. Just before the book was published, on the 24th of April 1998, Luty was convicted for the manufacture of a prohibited weapon, and he was sentenced to 4 to 5 years in prison, though the judge acknowledged that he had no dangerous or criminal intent for the weapons that he had created. The judge, however, was quite perturbed about the real reason the weapons were created. You see, they weren't made so that he could go on some mass shooting or kill anyone. Philip made these weapons as a protest against government regulation. And well, we just can't have that, can we? You know, the idea that these guns were made as a protest greatly upset the judge, and he saw it as something that needed to be stamped out. So the judge made an example of him. That's something that I have always been fascinated by. The fact is that, you know, you as a normal person should get a sentence appropriate to your crime, but then judges can just decide to make an example of you and give you a harsh sentence way above the crime you committed, so that they can send a message to other people. Basically, essentially, yeah, I know you should have got like a year, but I'm going to give you 6 years. I'm going to take away 6 years of your life because I want to send a message, and I'm using your life and your freedom as a tool so I can do that. See, when you lay it out like that, it sounds batshit insane. But for some reason, judges are just allowed to do that. In prison, Philip would grow an even greater contempt for the police and the government, due to the fact that he was now officially branded as a criminal and had several years of his life taken away. He felt that he had committed no wrongdoing and was in fact an upstanding, law-abiding citizen. He held a great disdain for convicts and hated that he had been given the title of one. Philip was originally sent to a low-security prison where he had the opportunity to work and have home visitations. However, he was soon transferred to a high-security prison with hardened criminals that had committed the worst of crimes. While detained there, he was told that his mother, Elsie Luty, had passed away. This, understandably, took a huge toll on him, and it caused him to hate the state even more, as he couldn't be with his mother while she died because of the state. But he kept his head down and he refused to go against his principles and beliefs, which the prison staff took a great disliking to. While in prison, a probation officer reported that Philip has had a long-term interest in guns and gun making. He said that at the time of Philip's probation interview, Philip had expressed strong views about the stringent gun laws in the country and the freedoms that the state grants to individuals. He stated that Philip had also embraced the views from American gun lobbies about the right to keep and bear arms, and that the police had seized many publications from Philip based around that topic. The probation officer felt that while there was no evidence whatsoever to suggest that Philip had contacted any of the extreme militia groups in America, the probation officer was still concerned by Philip's sympathy for their cause. Part of the probation officer's report said, "The prisoner's attitude to the role of the state and the possession and use of firearms gives rise to serious concern. This, taken together with the anti-authority stance exhibited during the sentence, adds to the concern that he could represent a very great danger to members of the public in future. The fact that his mother has died since imprisonment and that he appears to have developed an embittered view of his treatment in prison may reinforce his antisocial and anti-authority attitudes, making the likelihood of grave crimes being committed in the future even more likely." So just let me get this straight, just to make sure I've got this right. You took years of a man's life away, you took years of his freedom away, and to top it all off, you stopped him from being with his dying mother just because he was enacting one of his natural rights, a thing that he has a right to do, and you're surprised that he doesn't like you very much. This report shows just how much the government did not want Philip getting out of prison, and how much of a threat his beliefs were to them. His parole failed even after his parole officer said that he had been a model prisoner and had complied with everything that was asked of him. Philip had followed every prison rule by the book. The parole officer also argued that because Philip's mother had died while he was detained, and with his father Edward Luty also being seriously ill, Philip had become very anxious that his father might also die and that he might not be able to be there to see him either. He never successfully gained his parole and would eventually be released after serving his full sentence in 2002. But even though Philip Luty had served his sentence and was released from prison, the harassment from the police and the government did not stop. 3 years later, on the 25th of February 2005, members of the Luty family were arrested at gunpoint by the police, including the now 75-year-old Edward Luty, who had been battling cancer. 3 addresses belonging to the Luty family were raided and items had been seized. This was a pretty extreme raid and the properties were left absolutely ransacked. Yet, nothing illegal was found during the search. This did not stop the police though, since the whole family were then charged with conspiracy to manufacture firearms, and later that year, Edward Luty passed away from cancer, with the stress likely not helping his recovery. Since Luty was very well versed in the police flexing their muscles so that they can scare everyone into knowing who's boss, Philip foresaw a lot of the current problems with free speech. He defended it and had a burning hatred for political correctness. He once wrote in one of his articles that the voices of people were being effectively silenced by a combination of PC culture and anti-free speech laws. He gave examples around speaking about religion, race, and banning the use of words that we have used for centuries without malice, stating that the government should never ever have the power to legislate against speech. Luty said that the same people that police speech are the same people that turn a blind eye and are quite happy to offend others with, and I quote, "violence, foul language and sexual references blasted daily through our TV sets." Luty would regularly write and advocate for free speech in many of his other articles. Philip later, between 2006 and 2009, became the main suspect in a harassment campaign against a local charity and developer at Cookridge in Leeds. He was arrested for several criminal incidents but was later released because there was a lack of evidence. Later in the year, on the 20th of May 2009, Philip was again arrested at gunpoint. This time, it was by the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit, and he was charged under the UK Terrorism Act of 2000. The law stated that Philip had made a record of information available that could assist terrorists. And he had a further charge of possession of a prohibited weapon because the police found, and I'm quoting from the police report, a collection of pipes which could be screwed together to produce an item from which a bulleted cartridge could be discharged. But Philip Luty would never see the inside of a cell ever again because, like his father, he had been diagnosed with cancer and later passed away on the 8th of April 2011, which meant that the police had to drop the criminal case against him because you can't take a dead man to trial. 2 copies of the original Luty SMG 9mm Parabellum are now part of the collection of the British National Firearms Centre and are exhibited in Leeds at the Royal Armouries Museum. His submachine gun and its plans were also exhibited in 2011 as an art piece named A Book and a Pistol, and this was in Oslo in Norway, and it was created by an artist named Cameron MacLeod. And people around the world have made weapons based on Luty's designs, and Luty's weapons have been documented in Australia, Brazil, Germany, Indonesia, Romania, Sweden, Ecuador, a bunch of other places, and also right here in the United Kingdom. Now, whether you agree or disagree on the gun debate, it's obvious that this entire debacle was not simply just about guns. This was about government control, because no matter where you stand on the gun debate, it's a fact that one of the entities that benefits the most from an unarmed populace is the government, because it's a lot easier to control people and be a complete authoritarian shitpile over them if you take away their ability to fight back. What Luty wanted to prove is that even if you take the guns away, the knowledge of how to build firearms is already out there. People can, in fact, make firearms out of things that they can find in their local hardware store. And how do you stop that? Are you going to ban metal pipes? Are you going to ban drills? Are you going to ban screwdrivers? It's just not feasible. It can't be done. The only way that you could stop it is to completely control the knowledge of how to do it. And that control of knowledge and control of the flow of free information can assist the government in stamping out many things that it doesn't like, which is why they pass a lot of laws that lets them do that. Just like gun laws, the entity that benefits the most from controlling speech and controlling information is the government. Getting a gun license in Britain is near impossible. You will hear some guys saying, no, it's not, I have a rifle and I have a shotgun and it's so easy to get a gun. Yeah, you and maybe a couple dozen other people in a nation of about 60 million. 90% of whom are farmers that are allowed a shotgun for the purpose of pest control. And even a lot of them get rejected for a licence. Most people in Britain who have gun licences are either farmers, ex-cops, ex-military, or people that have never even so much as breathed near a police officer in their entire life. You can be rejected for a gun licence because you got a caution, not an arrest, a caution from the police 20 years ago. For example, in Scotland, you need a licence for an air rifle. So that's not a shotgun, pistol, no powder involved, an air rifle. And I had my licence rejected, believe it or not for Nazi Pougand, not for the 1 or 2 or 8 fights that I got into when I was younger, not for any of that. The reason that I was rejected, and I'll post proof of this if people ask me, I got rejected for an air rifle licence because I got caught drinking in the street as a teenager. 16 years ago. However, it's really easy to get an illegal gun. Like in Britain, it's so easy to get an illegal gun. It's not just migrants in those rafts. Though what Philip had achieved at the time was impressive and it stirred up a lot of shit with the government, the entire point of it was to make a statement about liberty and freedom. And also that law-abiding citizens should not be punished for the actions of another person. But the main point that he wanted to make is that freedom of information is the most powerful weapon that any citizen can have. I realise that this was a little bit of a short one, but I mean, you just got essentially like 5 or 6 hour-long Mad Lads back to back, and it's Christmas, and just shut up, this is what you're getting. I just really enjoyed the story behind him, despite the fact that he was told not to do it, and what he did was extremely illegal and got him 6 years in jail. He did it anyway. He released the book anyway, and then after he got out of jail, he did it again. Right, I just like that. See that whole, I don't give a shit about whatever the government says or whatever the government wants me to do. I appreciate that, and to me, that is Mad Lad material. But still, you're getting a small short video, right? You've had enough. You little whore. And we can close this video with a quote from Luty. Whether or not you live in England, the right of free speech is a universally treasured right, but sadly, a right that is still denied to millions of people around the world. We must ask ourselves the question, would the US Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and Bill of Rights been written had freedom of speech in the America of the 1770s been restricted? Free speech is the foundation from which every other right has been built, and by which every right currently enjoyed can be defended.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube! Everybody